Almost 4,000 highly radioactive spent fuel assemblies will have to be stored indefinitely on the narrow strip of land between Interstate 5 and the ocean, where San Onofre now stands.
On June 7, 2013, Southern California Edison announced that it would permanently retire its San Onofre nuclear plant.
A video on Edison's website describes what happens to the fuel rods, which remain radioactive for tens of thousands of years.
Enclosed steel-lined concrete pools filled with water called spent fuel pools, and sealed stainless steel canisters that are housed in reinforced concrete structures. This is called dry cask storage.
The dry cask storage has recently been attracting attention. Donna Gilmore lives in San Clemente, maybe 5 miles from San Onofre. She's worried the stainless steel casks that Edison has chosen to use are not robust enough to last for decades or even centuries. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission recently ruled that radioactive waste can be stored on site indefinitely, since political gridlock nixed a long-term storage site for nuclear waste in Nevada.
In August, the NRC said, hey, this can stay here indefinitely. We're looking at the waste sitting here for potentially hundreds of years. We don't know how many years it's going to sit here. And the NRC only certifies these casks for 20 years.
Gilmore founded a website devoted to her research on how to decommission San Onofre safely. She was recently invited by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to speak at a regulatory conference in Maryland.
So please welcome Donna.
There, she asked Mark Lombard, director of the Division of Spent Fuel Storage, to delay Edison's decision about which dry casks to use.
Set higher storage standards. Now we have this extended storage requirement. We need you to take the leadership role to raise the standards. Don't worry about what we have now, what everybody owns. We have to think in terms of what we need.
Gilmore says the casks used by most of the nuclear industry in the United States are stainless steel and less than an inch thick. She says they're inferior to casks in use in Europe. They are cast iron and are up to 20 inches thick. Gilmore says the U.S. is using the thinner casks because they're cheaper.
The German design may be much more competitively priced, but we won't know until we can find a customer that will seriously allow them to bid.
Southern California Edison did agree to speak to the German vendor of the cast iron canisters.
As we've talked about adding in total approximately 100 additional dry fuel storage casks.
But Tom Palmisano, chief nuclear officer at San Onofre, says the German company has never applied for a license from the NRC to allow the casks to transport nuclear waste in the United States.
So that tells me there was not a lot of confidence on their part that they could successfully license the canister or the cask in this country.
Should we be inspecting the canisters earlier than that, though?
David Victor is chair of the Community Engagement Panel set up by Edison to engage the public in the decommissioning plan. He released a report this week saying it's time to move on from the debate over casks.
We could end up with kind of the worst case outcome, which is we're using a cask that nobody else is using in the industry. Nobody else is buying these things right now in the United States. And worse, we might have on site something that we're stuck with.
Victor says it's safer to stick with the technology already licensed in the United States if we want technical support and the ability one day to transport the material off-site. But Gilmore says since the thinner canisters are inside thick concrete overpacks, it's virtually impossible to inspect them for cracking.
Because it's so impossible to do right now, none of the canisters at San Onofre or anywhere else have been inspected for cracks or corrosion. Nowhere in the country. They've got thousands of these things. None of them have been inspected.
Victor is convinced the nuclear industry is waking up to the need to find a way to inspect fuel storage casks over the long term.
So it is simply no longer the case that the inspection is going to be done in a way where people are just kind of looking at part of the cask and sending in a postcard and saying everything's fine. This is a different world.
But in his report, Victor says the nuclear industry needs to be more open about its strategies for handling future problems, which, when dealing with highly radioactive materials, could be catastrophic.
Do we know how to put nuclear waste into casks securely and then develop the monitoring systems and apply those monitoring systems? I've become confident we know how to do that. Do we know how to deal with all contingencies that are going to come up along the way? I think everybody knows that things are going to happen that we don't, for which the answers are not yet known.
Victor says the Community Engagement Panel will have a priority in 2015 to discuss what communities around San Onofre can do to push the federal government to honor their promise to eventually remove radioactive fuel from sites where millions of people live. Alison St. John, KPBS News.